Good evening. My name is John Sawyer. I'm pastor of Bedford Presbyterian Church. And on behalf of all of us here, we welcome you, both those of you who are in person and in your cars in the parking lot, as well as those who are gathering tonight on Zoom. We are all united in a common purpose, one mind and heart, no matter where we are. So we encourage everyone, especially those who are with us virtually, to participate fully in both word and in action. Tonight's vigil is one that reaches across the country through communities and houses of worship and prayer. Among us tonight are representatives from the New Hampshire Council of Churches. We're also joined on Zoom by Rabbi Beth Davidson from the Temple Adath Yeshurun in Manchester. At our vigil next Monday night, we will welcome Sabit Er from the Turkish Cultural Center, among others. The COVID crisis and the economic and societal fallout from the pandemic has had a dramatic effect on every part of our society, and no one is immune. A few weeks ago, the death toll from the coronavirus pandemic in the United States passed 200,000. The amount of grief we've had to process seems insurmountable, but our grief is compounded and complicated by other additional events. We mourn the deaths from COVID-19, and we mourn the destruction from hurricanes and wildfires. We mourn the death of businesses that provided livelihoods to many people. We mourn for our democracy. We mourn for all those who live in a world that sees the color of their skin as a threat. We mourn for the victims of violence, not only on the streets, but also in the halls of our government. We mourn because so much of what we called normal is gone. In the midst of so much loss and pain, we have gathered to declare our hope for something better and our commitment to making it possible. Yet hope does not lessen the need to grieve. Tonight, we have come together to grieve across the country, right now in Kenosha and Chicago, from California to Maine, and every place in between. People are gathered at churches and synagogues and mosques, all part of the national Mourning Into Unity movement. In our grief, we are not alone. We mourn in solidarity with others of faith, and we rejoice that as different as our traditions may be, we are yet one. Next week, we will be gathering again at 6 p.m. on Monday evening to focus on hope. But tonight, we gather to grieve.
I'm Jason Wells from the New Hampshire Council of Churches. I invite you all to pray with me now. O God, our comfort and our strength, our help in the midst of trouble, our hope in the midst of despair. We come before you, weighted down by months of pain and years of struggle. Give us the courage to face the tragedies that overwhelm us, the wisdom to name them with their true names, and strengthen the bonds between us, that we might hold one another in our grief, encourage one another in our hope, and support one another in our commitment to a world healed and made new. And let all of God's people say, Amen.
I'm Rabbi Beth D. Davidson from Temple Adath Yeshurun. The text I'm about to share comes from the Book of Lamentations, which traditionally is written by the prophet Jeremiah. I think it is suitable for us tonight because it reminds us of the power of community, the tragedy of communal loss, and of our responsibility to bear witness. These words come to us from Jeremiah, who grieved 2,600 years ago for what had become of his people. Echa, yoshva vadad ha'ir, rabati am hayta ka'almana, rabati vagoyim, sarati bamdinot hayta lamas. How lonely sits the city that once was full of people. How like a widow she has become. She that was great among the nations. She that was a princess among the provinces has become a vassal. She weeps bitterly in the night with tears on her cheeks. Among all her lovers, she has no one to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. From daughter Zion has departed all her majesty. Her princes have become like stags that find no pasture. They fled without strength before the pursuer. Jerusalem remembers in the days of her affliction and wandering all the precious things that were hers in days of old. Zochra Yerushalayim Yamei Anya Umrodeha Kol Machamudeha Asher Hayu Mimei Kedem. Here ends the reading from the Book of Lamentations.
I am Keith Stahl, an elder in this congregation, and I serve on the staff of Catholic Medical Center, where many COVID-19 patients were treated during the height of the crisis and where the battle against COVID-19 continues. These words come to us from the Apostle Paul in a letter he wrote the first generation of Christians in the city of Corinth. He writes about how easy it is to fall into despair, but about how faith and community can keep a person strong. Here are the words of Paul to his people and to us. We do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, of the affliction we experienced in Asia, for we are so utterly unbearably crushed that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death, so that we would rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He who rescued us from so deadly a peril will continue to rescue us. On him we have set our hope that he will rescue us again, as you also join in helping us by your prayers. Here ends the reading.
It is said that it is better to light one candle than to curse the darkness. Tonight, we who are physically gathered here and we who are gathered online light many candles against the darkness. Whether you are with us in person or online, light a candle now and trust that even in the midst of the darkest grief, there is light. Let's light our candles. While I recite the Mourning Into Unity candlelighting blessing, hold your candles outstretched for all to see. Connect your eyes with others in this space, whether online or in person. By lighting our candles in this time of pandemic, we mourn the dead we know and those that we don't, the ones who died alone, held in their last minutes only by God. Even as we mourn the dead, we honor and pledge our unity with the living, our country, our planet, and all of us still here. So let us now call to mind all that we grieve, all that we mourn, and name it. Let us speak its name. Let us speak their names. If you are with us online, please type into the chat all that rises in your mind and your heart so that the rest of you may join together in your prayer. In silence, let us remember the darkest days of the COVID crisis. Let us remember our fear, our isolation, and our pain. And let us now speak aloud what those days were like, or type it into the chat. And let us all say together, we remember and we mourn. We remember and we mourn.
In silence, let us remember the people who suffered the ravages of the virus. First, let us remember those who suffered but lived. Let us call them to mind and name them aloud or type them into the chat. In silence, let us remember the people who died, the people we knew and loved, and the people we did not know but are our neighbors still. Let us call them to mind and name them aloud or type them into the chat. James Noble Duncan.
Mr. Lanzettel.
And let us all say, we remember and we mourn.
We remember
and we mourn.
Let us remember all of the Black and Indigenous and communities of color whose people have suffered from COVID-19 in great and disproportionate numbers. May we speak their names or type them into the chat. And let us all say, we remember and we mourn. We remember and we mourn. In silence, in our mind's eye, let us remember all of the businesses that have closed or are struggling, all the workers who are without income, all the people who struggle to support their families and even themselves. Let the images of the places and people rise in our minds and in our hearts, and let us name them aloud or type them into the chat. And let us all say, we remember and we mourn. We remember and we mourn.
In silence, let us be mindful of all of the cracks in our democracy, all the threats to the American experiment. Let us be especially mindful of the ways the upcoming election holds out the hope of a more perfect union. Let us speak aloud now all that we see or hear in our hearts and minds, or type that into the chat now. And let us all say together, we remember and we mourn. We remember and we mourn.
darkest night, you kindle the hope that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the hope that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the hope that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the hope that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the hope that never dies away, never dies away. Within our darkest night, you kindle the hope that never dies away, never dies away. Shelter us beneath your wings, divine presence of the universe. Guard us from all harmful things. Keep us safe throughout the night until we wake with morning's light.
Sustain us, heal us, strengthen us. Lift us up and give us hope for the tomorrows to come. May all beings everywhere be happy and free.
May the thoughts, words, and actions of our own lives contribute in some way to that happiness, to that healing, and to that freedom for all. Amen. As we conclude our program this evening, I want to give my thanks to Bedford Presbyterian Church, to Pastor John Sawyer, and to Keith Stahl, who helped lead in person, but also my gratitude to Rabbi Beth Davidson of Temple Adath Yeshurun for her contributions to tonight's service. As we move on in our evening, there will be an opportunity for those who are online to continue in breakout rooms with some discussion time together. And for all of you, either in person or online, I give the invitation that we will return next Monday, October 19th at 6 p.m., either here in person at Bedford Presbyterian Church or on Zoom. And you can find the link on nhchurches.org to join us once again. As our prayer vigil next week will focus on the movement from mourning into unity. And we'll resume our prayer time together next week.